Neo-Tigo Games!
Hey there folks, and welcome to Story Stripped Down, the show where we strip down the stories from movies, video games, and books to see what worked and what didn't work. I'm Drew from Neo-Tigo Games, and since I'm currently writing a few of my own stories, my plan is to dig into the classics and my personal favorites to learn from them and improve my own storytelling skills. If you're interested in narrative structures and character development, keep on listening and join me on my learning journey. Of all the Studio Ghibli movies I've seen so far, the one that stands out for me is Kiki's Delivery Service. I liked how well crafted it was and was amazed at how it resonated with both my kids. Even the one that normally prefers movies with giant monsters and explosions. Most of all, I like that it's a great example of a coming-of-age tale, even though it doesn't take place in a school setting. Kiki's Delivery Service was released in 1989 and was written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. I'll be playing some audio clips from the 1998 English dub from Disney, which was voiced by Kirsten Dunst, Phil Hartman, Tress MacNeille, and Janine Garofalo. As always, this podcast is going to be a glass and a half of full cream spoilers, so you should probably watch the movie first. You won't regret it.
Come on, Gigi.
I'm gonna put my paws together and pray you're not serious.
Of course I am. You know ever since I turned 13, I've been excited about making this trip.
In case you haven't seen the movie, Kiki is a young witch who has just turned 13. That means it's time for her to move out from her parents' home to spend a year living in another town and helping a new community with her witch powers. Something like a witch version of the Amish Rumspringer. Before she leaves her family home, she takes her mom's old broom to fly with, her dad's radio, and her familiar, a talking black cat named Gigi. She excitedly zooms into the sky in search of a new home and a lot of independence. Kiki eventually arrives at a town by the ocean and immediately gets into trouble with a policeman for flying recklessly in crowded areas. She is rescued by a boy named Tombo, who tries to chat with her, but Kiki rejects him on the grounds that he was too pushy and objectified her as a witch, which is a rarity in this town. Between Tombo, the policeman chasing her, and the cold reception from the townsfolk, Kiki doesn't feel like she fits in, until she comes across a heavily pregnant baker named Osono, who was chasing after a customer who left their baby's pacifier behind in her bakery shop. Kiki uses her flying powers to return the pacifier just as the baby begins to cry, and this gives her the idea to start a delivery service with her flying broom powers. The kind-hearted Osono lets Kiki stay in a spare room above the bakery until her new delivery service can take off. I'm proud to say this pun was 100% intentional. Just when things seem to be going well, Kiki starts to lose her powers. She can no longer fly, she can no longer speak to Gigi, and she's always in a foul mood. She loses all sense of purpose and spends her time moping around the bakery. During her depression, she bumps into an artist named Ursula, who shares some wisdom about artist block and needing to find one's own spirit. Kiki is re-energized by this encounter and is returning home when she finds out that Tombo is trapped in an out-of-control airship. Borrowing a broom from a bystander, she digs deep into her spirit and starts to fly again to rescue Tombo from certain death. This restores her confidence in herself, and she resumes her delivery service. Kiki's Delivery Service is a coming-of-age tale, but unlike most coming-of-age movies like Perks of Being a Wallflower, Edge of 17, Dazed and Confused, or Snack Shack, Kiki is a fantasy movie about a witch. A young witch, yes, but a witch nonetheless, with magical powers. Her story doesn't take place in a high school setting, not even a magical school for witches and wizards, and it doesn't culminate in a prom or a big house party. But it still hits all the requirements of a really real coming-of-age story, tackling really real adolescent issues. So what are the necessary elements of a coming-of-age story? Character growth, in terms of maturity, and the transition from innocence to experience. While this movie can be classified as a fantasy, Kiki encounters all these issues by leaving the safety of her family and hometown and moving to a large and foreign city, and the pressures she faces in finding a job and a purpose in life. By using the allegory of a young witch's initiation, it might even convey these adolescent themes more effectively than a traditional last days of high school type of story. The first trial that Kiki has to undergo is leaving her family and home, in search of her own independence and identity. You can see how excited she is about this through the energetic packing of her bags, and the way she decided to leave immediately and earlier than originally planned because the weather report predicted a beautiful cloudless night. Her eagerness to find her own independence was so strong that nothing her parents could say would dissuade her from leaving immediately. But once she's actually out there and arrives at a big exciting town with an ocean view, Kiki realizes that a new place comes with its own problems. Miyazaki contrasts Kiki's hometown and her new town through the way the residents treat her. In her hometown, Kiki is beloved by not only her parents, but also the other townsfolk. On the night of her departure, she is surrounded by plenty of friends, all gathered to show their encouragement and love as she departs in search of a new home. When she arrives in the new town, the scenery is beautiful, but the people aren't welcoming and largely ignore her. A police officer chases after her for causing disruptions with her flying broom. She meets other children her age, dressed in preppy clothes, and she feels embarrassed by her witch's garb. For the first time in her life, Kiki has to come to terms with the fact that it's a big and uncaring world out there, and not everyone is willing to welcome and accept her for exactly who she is. There is an exchange between Kiki and her father in the beginning of the movie, where Kiki asks him to carry her like the way he always did when she was a kid. Kiki's father lifts her up, but not without obvious difficulty, and she holds out her arms like she's flying. Her father tells her that she can always come home if things don't work out, but Kiki readily dismisses the idea of going back to her old room. I love this scene because it tells you a lot in under a minute. Kiki must have always yearned to fly, even as a young child, and her dad would lift her up and help her pretend. But she's grown up now and can fly on her own. In fact, she's grown up so much that her dad can't help her as much anymore, as conveyed through his struggle to lift her. He is not quite ready to let her go, but she's no longer willing to stay home because her desire for independence and growth is too strong. On her first night alone and away from her family, Kiki can be seen lying in bed, all morose and listening to her father's radio as a way to feel closer to home. It's dawned on her that maybe the big world out there isn't all sunshine and rainbows after all. After pondering if she should perhaps leave this town after the initial rejections from the townsfolk, Kiki decides to stay and find other people like Osono who will accept her for who she is. Kiki scores 1 point for her developing maturity. Part of growing up is finding a job and some form of purpose in your life, and that's a hurdle we all face. For Kiki, she's a witch in training and therefore has to find a new town and service that town with her witch powers. What exactly does that mean? Well, at the beginning of the movie, Kiki doesn't know either. Her mom is a potions witch, brewing potions to help fellow townsfolk cure ailments, but Kiki hasn't learned how to do that yet. She bumps into a fellow young witch during her search for a new town, and that witch has already discovered her powers as a fortune teller. So what should Kiki do? What can Kiki do? Well, she can fly. Not particularly well, but she can. And after helping Osono return a baby's pacifier, Kiki lands on the idea that she can be a courier. So she pursues this career for a while, though she's not exactly a natural at it. She accidentally drops her first delivery, and her second was delayed when she was caught in a storm and didn't know what to do. For her third delivery, she decided to walk. Soon after, she realizes she can't fly anymore, and even breaks her mom's old broom trying. After that, she loses confidence in her abilities and identity as a witch, and decides to take a break from her delivery job to focus on helping a Sono in the bakery. I can relate to this part. Whenever I start a new job and things get difficult, I start doubting myself. Am I an imposter? Are my new coworkers going to realize I'm not suited for this role? My kids have felt the same way after a few months into their music lessons, and the notes start getting more and more difficult to play. Kiki's self-doubt in this sequence is 100% authentic and relatable. Later, Kiki meets up with an artist named Ursula, who invites her back to a cabin in the woods, and then they share a discussion where Ursula compares her art with Kiki's powers of flight, and how we have to find our own inspirations to fuel our passions. This scene is a must-watch for anyone with even the slightest desire to make art, whether you're a budding podcaster, a musician, or an indie game designer.
I love to paint so much. I'd paint all day until I fell asleep right at my easel. And then one day, for some reason, I just couldn't paint anymore. I tried and tried, but nothing I did seemed any good.
In the beginning of the movie, Kiki takes her mom's old broom as a parting gift. That old broom represents more than a means of transportation. It symbolizes her mom's ideals and Kiki's upbringing and training to become a witch. All her life, she's known she's supposed to be a witch, but had never really pondered if she wanted to be a witch. Kiki's chat with Ursula re-energizes her, and from the very next scene, you can see Kiki taking active steps to get back on track. She takes on a new delivery job, even though she can't fly anymore. During that job, she finds out that Tombo is trapped in an out-of-control airship, and she goes off to help him. Since she's still not flying, she runs on her feet. Once she's finally there, she borrows a broom and starts flying again. She's not too confident and unsteady on this new broom, but she does what she can, and she finally rescues Tombo. That's 2 points for Kiki for developing resilience. Everyone will have bad days where things don't go their way. Kids will roll on the floor and throw a tantrum, but as we grow older, we realize that we have to accept failure as a necessary part of life. Whenever we can't do things perfectly, we do what we can until we can get good enough. Let's get that growth mindset going, folks. There are other elements in this fantasy story that ring true for teenagers, like Gigi the talking cat. He's like a friend that's always there to support her. But it's a sad fact of life that everybody's priorities can change. Gigi finds a girlfriend and starts to spend more time with this other cat than Kiki. Later, Kiki can no longer talk to him anymore. However, she also doesn't need him at this point. Kiki has grown up and now has to make her own decisions without counting on a cat for validation. In the entire last act, Kiki never has to consult Gigi or any other character before she makes her decisions. For becoming truly independent, Kiki now has 3 points. Lastly, and this is not one of the fantasy elements, but something that feels so authentic and true, I like the way Kiki's mood can suddenly sour, especially when Tombo's friends show up. She could be all smiles and laughs one moment, but then just huffs and storms off the next, and Tombo has no clue what triggered the change. My daughter is also 13, and I can attest that she also has these mood swings.
No, I don't. I'm his daughter, and I do not have mood swings.
Hey, don't interrupt my podcast. I mean, I don't bother you when you're watching your anime volleyball stuff.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, sorry about that interruption. Now, where were we?
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
Many coming-of-age stories pit the protagonist against an antagonist, usually a bully like Ace Merrill in Stand By Me, or Regina George in Mean Girls. It could be someone that is actively preventing the protagonist from achieving their goals, like Regina George, or maybe the protagonist is projecting all their issues into an individual, like the mom in Turning Red. Kiki's Delivery Service bucks the trend by excluding any kind of antagonist in the story. Think about it. The antagonist is not the neighbor's cat that Gigi hooks up with. It's not Tombo's preppy friends. It's not even the out-of-control airship at the end. There is no clear bad guy in this movie. But that doesn't mean the story lacks conflict or drama. It just means all of the conflict is internalized. Kiki's obstacles are her insecurity and immaturity, and she overcomes them by developing confidence and resilience towards the end of the movie. I appreciate a story that skips an antagonist, like what Miyazaki did here. I love our Darth Vaders and Ed 209s as much as anyone else, but now and then, it's nice to have a story where the protagonists have to resolve their internal emotional growth issues without necessarily challenging another character. Toy Story 1 did it well, as did Good Will Hunting. The world does not always have to be viewed with an us versus them perspective. You can opt to exclude an antagonist in your story too, as long as the conflict is clearly defined and understood. You can skip the bad guy, but you still need conflict. Kiki has a goal to become a useful witch in this new town, and the conflict comes from her being unable to achieve that goal, be it from not knowing what she should do, or when she loses her powers. Skipping an antagonist doesn't result in lower stakes either. Kiki is absolutely devastated when she loses her powers and her confidence. Just watch that scene where she keeps trying to fly after she realizes her powers are gone. It's heartbreaking. Okay, let's sum up what I've learned from Kiki's Delivery Service. 1. You can tell a coming-of-age story using fantasy elements and still have it feel truthful. You just need to identify the key issues and illustrate them within the context of your fantasy story. 2. You don't always need an antagonist to create conflict. Conflict and resolution can be internal as long as both are illustrated very clearly through the protagonist's changing actions and choices. 3. Adulting sucks. I miss the old days when all I needed to do each day was some homework and then I could spend hours playing video games without any other responsibilities. Alright, thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed the way I dig into stories, please follow for more story strip downs. I'd love to see your thoughts on Kiki's Delivery Service, so please drop a comment with what you think about the story and its characters. In next week's episode, I plan to look at a movie that not many people remember, The Last Castle, starring Robert Redford and James Gandolfini. If you can, watch it now so that you'll be up to speed when I analyze it next week. This episode of Story Stripped Down is written, produced, and hosted by me, Drew Pan. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on X as Neo Teagle Games. That's NeoTeagleGames. You can also find my game Gloom and Doom on Steam and all major consoles. It's a horror comedy visual novel about an ancient wraith and a teenage antichrist trying to prevent the apocalypse. If horror fantasy is not your thing, try my comedy novel, Toxic Boss Fight, available on Amazon. This one's about office politics and the quest to find meaning at work. Take care, everyone. Keep on reading and writing.